Great. Informed consent is the crux of a free society. Like if you don't get to have, accept or reject power over what goes into your body, you aren't free.
Our food is being controlled by just the same big corporate interests that are not having our health at the core of what they want. We want to at least try our best to eat in that coherent way. And we have an ability to make that change.
Your organization has achieved a significant dent in vaccine mandates.
We didn't do the science. We didn't do the clinical trials. We didn't do the flow safety. But one thing we know it's rare.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another engaging episode of Texans for Vaccine Choice podcast Shot Callers. My name is Carrie Bigford. I am the Outreach Director, and I am joined today with a very special guest, Mollie Englehart, who is the proprietress of Sovereignty Ranch, which is a 200-plus acre regenerative ranch outside of Bandera in Texas. Mollie is a fellow California refugee like I am, so she also has a unique perspective on our movement and the threat to our freedom. And I am so thrilled to have her here to tell us about a different part of liberty, which is the liberty of what you eat and the land that you live on and how well you take care of it. So Mollie Englehart, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I am passionate about your cause, as I was a pregnant and breastfeeding mother who was unable to even use the restroom in businesses in California for not complying with the experimental protocols during COVID. And so it's really close to my heart that we stand up and make sure that our children and our parents have choices about what we're going to put in our bodies. And that extends to food as well. And I think that informed consent is getting some conversations around vaccines, but we also have to have those same conversations around food, because there's just as damaging ingredients in our food nowadays as there is in our vaccines.
Yeah, I would agree. Informed consent is the crux of a free society. And if you don't own your body space, like if you don't get to have accept or reject power over what goes into your body, whether it be food or whether it be injectables, you aren't free.
No.
Yeah.
And yes, you're not free if you can't say, this is my body and I want to take care of it in the way that I feel connected to God and the way I believe that God wants me to take care of it, then we have nothing.
Yep, I agree. So tell us about your Texas dream. Tell us about Sovereignty Ranch and how it serves the community, because I know that you serve your community very well in a lot of different ways.
So Sovereignty Ranch is a 200 and something acre ranch, and we have an on-farm restaurant. We have hospitality. We do weddings. We do quinceañeras. We do corporate, off-sites, as they call them, to go have a little creative day somewhere. But you can also just come out and have breakfast or brunch with your family after church on Sunday, on Saturday. We're open Thursday through Sunday. And we are growing the produce on the farm. We are raising beef, lamb, pork, and goat on the farm, as well as chickens for eggs. And we're not into the chickens for meat yet. But we are very, very, very excited about being able to bring food to the community. I believe that local farms and local food is a national security issue. And we often talk about other national security issues like, infrastructure for power and water and readiness in the military and local manufacturing. And all of those are national security issues, and energy, having enough oil. That is all factually true. But when there's a really big emergency, if it's weather related or an EMP or something like that, it's going to go like this: air, water, food. So we need food in our communities. We cannot outsource everything to the cheapest hourly wage from all around the world. We must come from a place of recognizing that there may be a day that we can't just go get everything at HEB, and we want to actively participate in our own rescue. I believe that God helps those that help themselves. And so I want to grow food in a way that's cohesive in the neighborhood, in the the Texas Hill Country and feed the Texas Hill Country food that they can know, like, oh, these animals were not vaccinated, and oh, these vegetables were not sprayed with atrazine or who knows what else. I really want to do this in a way where everybody is feeling safe and informed as to what I am doing with my meat and with my dairy and with my vegetables. And right now, I don't think any of us really know what's in our food. I saw this article recently where someone was saying, I can't believe that the organic meat at Costco is vaccinated. And I laughed. I said, like, all organic food is animal products are vaccinated. There's no rules around, there is rules around antibiotics. And I actually think it's wrong, because antibiotics, as much as I think they're overused, they actually are solving for something. And so the fact that farmers, if you have a certified organic farm and you have goats and you have a goat with mastitis, if you give that goat antibiotics, you can never have that goat in your organic system again. So you have to sell it or harvest it for family use or sell it as non-organic meat. In my opinion, where there should be a withdrawal time with antibiotics, because I think that farmers are allowing in the organic system are allowing animals to suffer for extended periods of time because we aren't allowed to use antibiotics. And I don't think I've probably only taken antibiotics 4 times in my whole life. I'm not into medications. I'm not into using pills. But when you have an animal that's sick and dying and you have to make a choice between, well, let's see if it gets better on its own, or I can never have it in my system again, I think that farmers are making hard choices that may cause suffering. And so but there is no rules. 100% of chickens, baby chicks, are getting vaccinated, and everything that are making your eggs are making everything. So I want people to be able to go to a farm where they can come, they can talk to me, they can look, they can see my chickens in the orchard, in the pasture. They can say, oh yeah, I feel good about how she's raising them. And they can ask me about my cows, and I can say, I only use one vaccination. It's 97 years old. And it's because I lost a whole year of cows to blackleg. And so we do vaccinate for that. And I don't vaccinate for anything else. And people can make the decision themselves. And that, I think, is really important. And we don't have that in our food system at all.
Yeah. I loved how you also talked about the resilience of being self-sufficient. Back in the 1950s and 1940s, everybody had a garden in their yard for vegetables, and it was something that was commonplace and usual. And now everyone's kind of shifted towards monoculture grasses that don't provide any nourishment or food. And we have really outsourced what used to be considered a personal responsibility. All of our grandmothers had gardens. All of our, great grandmothers certainly had gardens and knew how to provide for themselves. And we've really lost that just in a single, 2 generations. And I love that a huge part of the offering at Sovereignty is teaching others how to use regenerative farming practices and how to work their own land. There's a lot of education that you provide at Sovereignty Ranch.
For sure. We do a homesteading course every year. We do sourdough classes. But when you think about that, my grandmother had a garden. But when I look at my life in California, what percentage of my friends that are my age, I'm 47, know how to cook extensively? And I don't just mean like make some food from a box, but how to preserve, how to save foods, how to create longevity with the foods that you do have. But I can cook, sew, crochet, knit, garden, grow things. I can do basic plumbing. I can do basic carpentry. I would say that we've lost that ability. And I talk about that with my children a lot, like that we have to rely on our own abilities, and that we live in a society that doesn't value that anymore. But part of being sovereign is relying on our own abilities and trusting that is going to be a better outcome for us. And I think that it's really important for people to be able to come to a place like this and see a family doing this. And then maybe they're not going to be inspired to buy a 200-acre farm. But what if they started an herb garden on their patio, and then they started eating those herbs, and then that led to a fruit tree in their yard or whatever? But I also think there's something that we don't talk or think about a lot, but there's a lot of science around water, and water has memory, and water has information.
Yeah, the Masaru Emoto studies in the original version of it.
And then there was Aveda Austin, and there's been a lot of
continued his work.
Continuing this work. Well, I was talking to Aveda Austin about this thought I had, is that food is mostly water when it's growing, right? And so
are we. We're mostly water.
So are we. So when I'm eating a peach this morning, I'm eating a peach from the tree right here on the farm. There's some coherency in that. There's information, DNA information in that peach that's going into my body, that is giving my body clear messages of what to do. When I'm drinking raw milk from a cow that is living in the same environment that I'm living in, there is information going to my immune system that is coherent based on this place and this land. But we are eating food with no coherency to where we are. And that might seem like out there to people, and maybe it is, but imagine that we were not meant to eat food from thousands of miles away as our whole diet. For the history since like forever, even in the Bible, they talk about bringing grain from one place to another, spices moving from one place, salt moving from one place to another. So yes, there was always parts of our diet where we were trading and everything, but the vast majority, the produce and the meat, because there was no refrigeration, 150 years ago, there was no refrigeration. So this is, a massive shift where we're not eating any of our fresh food and our meat from local places. That has to have an impact. And then you get all the chemicals that we're spraying on our food on top of that. And, as we can't all be concerned about every issue, but as the mothers that I assume listen to this podcast are concerned about what's going into their children, I think we want to look at and think about, well, the what's going into our food is also just as impactful, and it is being controlled by just the same big
corporate interests
that are not having our health at the core of what they want. And so we have traded our efficiency, our resilience for efficiency in such a way that the majority of what we are feeding our children is not filled with nutrients. And whether it's organic or not organic, it's not grown in soil. So much stuff is grown in hydroponics, in towers, in this and that. And then if it is grown in soil, it's not live soil. We're just putting nutrients on the soil, treating it almost like a hydroponic system. Healthy soil and a healthy human gut have 74% the same DNA. So that tells me that creation wanted us eating of healthy soil because that replenishes a healthy gut. That is obvious that we're meant to be eating of the soil. And so when we think about that, we're eating from a sterile food system, and not just that we're sanitizing all the food because we need it to have longer shelf life. So we're putting it in bleach or quat or whatever like that. But we're also just growing in sterile systems, like rows of oranges, but there's nothing underneath. It's just Roundup being sprayed underneath. And then it goes even further that our grain is being sprayed with Roundup or with glyphosate right before it's being harvested in order to use it as a drying agent. So we don't ever want to compromise on grain using non-organic. It's like, oh, let's just take our kids out to pizza. It seems like a loving thing to do in the moment. And I am culpable of making that not loving mistake when I'm tired or whatever. I'm not perfect. I order things from Amazon. I stop for pizza sometimes, but the vast majority of the bread that my kids eat is sourdough and organic, and has at least some percentage of grain where I got the wheat berries and ground it myself. And even if it's only 10%, what that's doing is it's putting that nutrient density back into the food because they are taking out the 20% of our flour that has the nutrients in it. They are really, and then they're spraying it with folic acid and all these other things that are not found in nature and not necessary. And we really must say enough is enough. And I feel hopeful. This is a moment in time where it seems that for the first time, conservatives and liberals seem to care about what's in our food. And it's weird. I'm seeing a lot of liberals all of a sudden carrying water for big corporations and saying it's tyranny to take away soda from food stamps or whatever. And I'm like, yo, that is not tyranny. That is a grant from the government. It's a nutrition grant. So nutrition grants should cause nutrition. And if the number one thing being bought with this nutrition grant is soda. Then the grant is not working, and we need to
sugar water with food dyes.
Yes, it's just it's diabetes in a can.
Yeah.
And so I got some flack. I said recently that if I wrote an article about this for Epoch Times, and I said that if it was up to me, we wouldn't allow SNAP to buy anything that had more than 5 ingredients. And so by doing that, we would limit what people could put into the food. And so we'd get the companies that depend on those SNAP dollars, whether it's Walmart or HEB or wherever, they would come down and they would create a ton of healthier options because you could only have 5 ingredients. And that people said, well, that's crazy, blah, 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 blah. Honestly, it's not crazy because all the additives that we're feeding our children is crazy. That's the crazy thing that we...
Well, and the lack of research into the safety and efficacy, like a lot of them, they've been doing it on, they do generally assumed as safe, right? Is what they've been doing, is they've been generally assuming it's safe, but nobody's actually been verifying it. And then it's been going out in high levels.
Well, if you think about Roundup, it was originally a antibiotic, and then it was used as a drain cleaner. And then they realized that this drain cleaner could actually, they were cleaning drains and everything was dying outside of the drain. And they were like, oh my God, it's a great weed killer. And then, so the rules and whatever testing, when they decided it was 2 weeks before harvest that they could spray it, that was like, imagine they're talking about below an orange tree, below an avocado tree, spraying it on the ground, on a fruit that has a skin. And then now we're spraying it directly onto our wheat, barley, oats prior to harvest, 2 weeks, but it's not getting washed. You can't wash dry grain. It's literally just on there. And then we're eating it. And our beer is filled with it. Our breads are filled with it. It's in everything. Cheerios, which is widely used as a first food for children, is the highest level of glyphosates of anything that we have on the market here. And there was just a big study that came out yesterday or the day before, you guys can look it up, showing that glyphosate in what the USDA is deeming as safe in our food supply is causing 7 different kinds of cancer.
Yeah.
It's not safe. And then how many people do you know that are dying of cancer? It's crazy. And then you're like, well, I don't know. She didn't get vaccinated. She's really healthy. Da, 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 da. Yeah, because just living in this world and eating corn chips or having a pizza is exposing you to crazy high levels of toxins that were never, ever tested.
Yeah. And that our bodies are not designed to process. Like we're not designed to process that kind of toxicity. I mean, even though our world has technologically advanced tremendously in the last couple generations, our biology has not shifted at all. And we are not designed to process things like Velveeta and Miracle Whip and glyphosate and atrazine and red dye number 40, all the other things.
We're not meant to
carrageenan, casein, you can go on and on and on.
And so how do we get back to a simpler way of living? And we're also trapped, and I myself included, in the money slave system that we don't know how to step outside of it. We don't know how to prioritize our health. And I don't have the answers. I'm just here trying to be an inspiration, but I'm out on the skinny branches, struggling financially. Like my project only works if the mothers listening to this podcast come out and spend the weekend or come for brunch or buy dairy or have a meat delivery. If you're within 100 miles, we do we'll deliver right to your house with a minimum, but that it only works if the community supports it. And so we have to remember as consumers that we are the people, we are responsible. And if we don't support these ideas that we want in the world, then they can't exist. And so as cool as people think this is that me and my husband are doing, I literally say to every guest, like, well, this can only work without you. So please make it a regular thing, add it into your weekly, monthly schedule, because people can think this is cool. But then if you go to Olive Garden the rest of the month and in 3 more months on your birthday, you come out here, we can't survive like that. It needs to be that we have to put our money where our beliefs are. And if we want there to be farms like mine and Joel Salatin and Will Harris and all of these different things, we need to support them. It needs to be that we choose to buy the higher quality, less chemical food, because that is what matters.
Yeah, I agree completely. My family was at that fork in the road years ago, and we decided to really invest in our health with, high quality nutrition. And, the other kids in the neighborhood will come over and comment about how, we don't have any good snacks because all of our stuff is real food. And it makes me sad that they're no longer accustomed. Like, we had a friend who come over who had never had actual cherries. She'd only had artificial cherry flavors. And she was eating like these organic, dark red cherries. And she didn't like them because they didn't taste like cherries to her, because she was used to that like maraschino sweet cherry. And it just makes me sad how many children are never exposed to real food, and how many parents, tell themselves, oh, well, that's all my kids want to eat. But like, their 5-year-old doesn't have a bank account and a driver's license. So like, the parents, it starts there in the home of making a decision to live out this model and then model it for their kids. Right.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like a failure. I have one child.
I'm not perfect either. Nobody's perfect.
I have one child who's very addicted to carbohydrates, and I struggle. And he was my only hospital birth, and he wasn't vaccinated, but he did get the vitamin K because he was a traumatic, vacuumed out. I had a broken coccyx bone, and he was hitting the coccyx bone over and over for days.
Oh, that sounds so painful.
Before we went to the hospital. And so he had some damage to his head.
Yeah, some bruising.
So I did end up getting the vitamin K because I was so tired, and they just convinced me that he could have brain bleeding, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think it's the vitamin K that did it, but there's some brain injury that has him have a vomiting reflex. And we've done cranial sacral, and we've done neural feedback, and we've done a lot of stuff, but has a hard time eating. And when I push him to eat things that he doesn't want to eat, then he vomits like everything else. Right. And so he eats too many things but I still have to remind myself, he doesn't eat anything that's not a whole food. He doesn't eat anything that's not organic. He largely doesn't eat any bread that's not sourdough. And so I'm doing better than a lot of people are. And sometimes I'm still just make myself so wrong. Like, oh my God, is he just going to eat bread and goat cheese for dinner again because he threw up? My husband's like, just eat some of that. And then he throws up, and I don't want that. I don't want my son throwing up at the dinner table every night. And so it's been a challenge. And I totally have sympathy for parents that are struggling with what their kids eat. And my advice, and it's not perfect advice, but is that get the best version. So if my son will eat tacos with ground beef, then he's eating ground beef from the farm, and we are growing those tacos. And you can buy taco shells here at the ranch. You don't have to make them yourself, but we make our own tortillas with corn that we grew. So I feel like, okay, it's a blue corn tortilla that we grew the corn. It's beef that we grew. And okay, and it's only beef and corn. I understand it's not like the best, but I feel better about that. Or he wants a naan bread, but I'm doing sourdough naan and I'm making it myself. Then he's eating that with goat cheese and garlic or whatever. And I'm like, literally, he's just eating bread and cheese. Like, I'm feeling so guilty. And then I have to remind myself, but it's goat cheese that's organic, and he's drinking raw milk from the farm every day. And yes, he's chubbier than my other kids. Yes, because he eats too many carbohydrates, and I get it. And I can go down the failure path. But I think what I just have to keep reminding him is like, I want you to be strong. And what mommy's saying is, I love you. And I feel responsible for you being healthy. And so when I get worried when you only eat, and I'm telling you, like literally he eats beef tacos, he eats tofu tacos, he eats toast with goat cheese, and he eats like flatbread, sourdough flatbread, and he eats pizza crust with just garlic and olive oil, no cheese, or like so many textures make him want to throw up. And
Yeah.
and there's
Sounds like
things
a sensory issue, right?
there's things he used to eat and then he throws up from it, and then he's scared to eat it. So he used to eat pasta, he used to eat oatmeal. He doesn't eat those things anymore.
Yeah, those food aversions can be hard.
And so, yeah, it's very challenging. But I invite parents to don't beat yourself up too much, but get the best version that's available to you of what your kids will eat, and not just surrender to the maraschino cherries.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Like the best version of what we can provide is what we provide. And then we have to let go of the rest, because our children are independent humans. Like we influence them, but we can't control every move that they make, because that's not what it's about.
No.
It's about the best you can with the circumstances you're given. For
sure. And I have that same thing though. They look in my fridge and they're like, there's nothing to eat. And my kids are like, well, there's 2 gallon jugs of yogurt. They're like, there's 2 gallon jugs of yogurt. Do you want yogurt and honey? And they're like, kids are like, I guess. Like they expect yogurt to come in a little cup like this or whatever. And my kids like the gallon with the pitcher, with the ladle, and putting honey on it. And the other kids are like, I've never eaten yogurt out of a glass gallon jar before. I'm like, well, this is homemade yogurt and it's raw. It's going to be more sour than the yogurt you're used to. But it's really good for your tummy. And, but yeah, we have that same thing. Kids come over and they look at
they're no longer used to what whole food kitchen looks like.
Not at all. They're like, there's nothing ready to eat in the fridge. Yes, right. You're right. There's nothing ready to eat.
Unless you want like fruit or something.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And that's the way we were designed. And also you mentioned about the soil, that's absolutely true. All throughout humanity, we've lived in small little clusters of humans, and we were very limited other than like spices, dehydrated things that we could bring along. And we were designed to live in very close relationship with the land around us. And now we're just disconnected, as we are in so many other ways from our normal human circumstances. Like even right now, normally we would be face to face and having all of this wonderful nonverbal, presence feedback. And we have all this technology where we're each in our own separate spaces, hundreds of miles apart, having an interaction that's close, but not quite the same as in person. And so it's another, disconnect.
Yeah. And in some ways, I think it's beautiful because we can communicate with so many more people. And there's all these mothers that are wherever they are that couldn't come and watch us have this conversation in person. And so there's so many blessings in it. But I think that we have to also recognize the downfalls in it. And we have to do the work to be better in the way that we're raising our children in not just in vaccines. And I mean, of course, vaccines. And I've never been vaccinated. So sorry about that. I'm 47 years old and I've never been vaccinated in my life.
That's very rare.
My mom says that I did get, I guess, one vaccine when I was very young, and she got the card. And then, well, I don't want to say what then happened. So I guess I did have whatever the first, but she waited till I was like older, like 3 or something. And I got the first something, and then that was it. And so I just had, my 4th kid. I had my first kid at 37, my 4th at 45. And I attribute part of that to a lifetime of eating healthy, but also a lifetime of not medicalizing. My parents never took me. I don't remember going to the doctor. And we did have a doctor, and he's still famous doctor now. His name is Tom Cowan. So I did have a pediatrician.
Oh yeah. Dr. Cowan. That's amazing that Dr. Cowan was your doctor.
Yes. But I was not, medicalized. I just didn't, I think, yes, I took antibiotics, but on a few occasions I got a staph infection once and whatever, but I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, I got my wisdom teeth out. So let's just take this round of antibiotics. It's like, well, if it gets infected, we'll take antibiotics. But other than that, we don't need to just take antibiotics for the sake of it, and that's how I was always raised. And my mother never took me to the doctor. She gave me soup and echinacea and did some herbal baths and whatever. And I was never taken to the doctor. And the few times that I have taken my kid to the doctor because I didn't feel like I could solve for it, my experience is that they don't even know. They're just guessing at what it could be this or could be this. Do you want to do a broad spectrum this? And I'm like, no, I want you to tell me. I came here because I couldn't figure it out. I wanted you to tell me something.
Yeah, modern medicine has really shifted significantly from the original dream. Like, I meet so many doctors that get into the profession and then they become disillusioned because they wanted to help people heal. And they usually discover some version of that, allopathic medicine isn't a system designed to produce health. It's a system designed to hide or reduce symptomatology alone. And it doesn't have the capacity to really look for the root causes of what's causing the illness. And, I agree, the medicalization can be hard and hard to overcome.
It's everywhere. It's I just took my dog. I had a dog get attacked by some wild animal. And then I was like, oh, can I get some flea medication? And she said, normally I order it online, but anyways, I was just there. And she said, well, I need an up-to-date vaccine record for your dog. I was like, to give it flea medicine? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm cool on that. And she's like, well, that's how we practice medicine. I was like, okay, well, you could just stitch her up and do the bandages and I will treat her for fleas or whatever, but I'll just order it from online. But I mean, that just seems like it's across even with animals. And I wrote another article for Epoch Times about that, about the cost of care. And when you're doing animal husbandry, you can see pretty quickly nutrition, interventions, and how it can impact and how it can add up very quickly. And we had a hard calving season where I lost a couple of mother cows. And I was just present to just one season of the hay was not as nutrient dense as I think it should be. And some bad lice and stuff for the winter time. It was crazy out here. I don't know, with the weather being weird and dry. And it was just and then the one mother was, couldn't get up. And so we induced labor and she ended up dying. But this is reflective of humans too. If we don't have good nutrition and then we're doing other things, we're trying to grow a baby, we're trying this, and these things stack up. And with animals, you see it pretty quickly. And with humans, we're pretty resilient. And so it can go farther before we actually see it. But the cost of care, you're going to pay now or you're going to pay later. You can't avoid paying the piper. And so it's, do we want to care for our body today or to keep it healthy, or do we want to care for our body later in a much more painful way? And
right, needing
it's going to be equally or more expensive.
Yeah. I had heard that through commercial agriculture practices and the stripping of nutrients from the soil, that produce today through commercial agricultural practices doesn't have the same nutritional density as something from the 50s or 60s when they were still using more regenerative agricultural techniques. Is that true? Have you verified that also?
That is true. And I'm going to tell you what, there is a technology on the horizon that is going to be game changing. It is going to be a way that you can measure nutrient density from your phone with an app. And so the labels are not going to matter as much anymore because you're not going to be able to lie. And you will be able to, and I'm sure that big corporations will figure out a way to kind of add certain nutrients to the water when they're growing it to have it higher or whatever. But at this point, it's going to change the game for the consumer because you'll be able to be in the grocery store and you'll be able to use your phone and check the nutrient density of vegetables based on the phones, whatever this technology that exists. So that's coming. And I think that it's going to be very disconcerting for big ag because they won't be able to hide behind labels. They won't be able to hide behind these
behind certifications or whatever.
Yes.
So What is that app called? Do you know, or who's developing it? Like, what more details do you have about that groundbreaking
I
technology?
do not. My brother knows a lot. You should have my brother on your podcast. My brother knows
Ryland?
about it. Do you know Ryland?
Yeah, we've spoken a couple times.
Yeah, you should have him on, and he is more involved in that. I don't. I just know that it's coming, and it's really
happening.
It's happening. Yeah, that's what I know.
Okay, what a great way to empower consumers to really vote with their dollars about the things that matter to them, and what a great way also to incentivize corporate agriculture and farmers to create a better product.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because definitely
very, very exciting.
Yep.
But I think that in the meantime, we got to support local farmers, and we got to support the highest quality food and making the choices, because we, the people, have the power to encourage farmers and all industries to go in the direction we want them to. And so, sorry. We had like a major flood here last night. I was up for 3 hours, like rescuing.
Yeah, farming is 24/7.
Like
so parenting, it never ends.
Yawning. But we have this. I was started to say it earlier, that there's this opportunity right now between left and right, and that both sides seem to be interested. And if we could really be a coalition at this moment, and have this coalition really committed to supporting farmers, spending our money where we believe it's important. And it's very interesting because we have never had this before. Healthy food has largely been a left wing kind of thing. And then
I would agree.
It's come on to the right. And I think that this is a moment in time where the people can literally say, enough is enough. I want full transparency. I want to know what's in my food. I want to know where my food is born. I don't want beef that says product of the USA that was born in South America, raised in South America, killed in South America, and shipped here to be chopped up into pieces. And now you've ground it up with cows from New Zealand and cows from Australia, and I now am eating ground beef from all around the world. I think we also want to think about, even that when we're talking about coherency. Were humans meant to eat a hamburger that has 1,400 different sets of DNA in it? Or were we meant to eat like of one animal for multiple weeks or months or whatever? I think it's a different conversation, the hunting and gathering. We want to at least try our best to eat in that coherent way. And we have an ability to make that change, but we have to be honest with ourselves about how much that food costs. There's a lot of people that say, oh, your food is too expensive or this, that. And I think we have to be honest that it's not apples and apples. It's not oranges and oranges.
Yeah, it's not the same quality at all. And it's pay now or pay later, because by investing in quality food and choices now, you can stave off a lot of medical intervention later, which is very expensive and painful a lot of the time. It's just a choice, so Sovereignty Ranch, you host events of all types, which is wonderful. And you provide like consulting services for people who are interested in their own regenerative farming practices of all sizes. I saw on your website. You have an on-site farm-to-table restaurant of everything from the farm. And then you have a CSA where people can order produce. Yeah?
Yeah, and we have meat. You could order meat as well.
And how far is your delivery radius?
100 miles from the ranch.
Awesome. Cool.
But it's a $300 minimum to get it directly to your door. But you can order bread and meat, and like just a 10-pound meat box is more than $100. So then you can easily get there with a produce bag and a meat box and some bread. And we make hot sauce, we make vinegar, we make tea, we make all different stuff. And so we even make spices. You can buy oregano or rosemary or all the different spices from the farm as well.
That's awesome. What a great community service to provide.
And we believe that you'll feel different, like that you'll actually feel different. And you can also buy dairy from us. We have to join our herd share because it's a herd share program. And I also have a book coming out you'll be able to pre-order in August, and then it'll be out at the end of September. So this is...
What's it about?
it's called Debunked by Nature. And so I was a vegan chef turned Texas cattle rancher. And that's a unique
That's a huge transition
story. And it basically talks about how nature showed me that nature never lies. And obviously, because nature is an expression of God and God never lies. And so I was able to take a lot of these ideas that exist in modern society and look at them through the lens of nature and realize that we're being lied to. And since we're all seekers of truth, I wanted to give people a way to ask, does this make sense? Is this a real thing? And if you take it to the farm, to the savannah, to the woods, and it doesn't hold up, then likely it's not a truth. It's a science. And
right,
that's
because
what
the truth can be resisted against and pushed back on, and it still stands.
Yes.
It doesn't even mind the resistance because it just proves it even more.
It just knows that it is.
Yep, it just knows that it is.
And so, and I just also talk about that we are mammals, although we have a connection with God and spirituality and consciousness in a way that maybe other mammals don't. We're still mammals, and all mammals prioritize water, food, shelter, and reproduction. And we have abandoned everything except for shelter. We're excellent at shelter. We're so good at shelter, but
we have very cushy shelters.
We do.
In abundance.
We have abandoned water. We've abandoned our food, and we've abandoned reproduction largely. And then you can go, we've almost abandoned breastfeeding in America, 6 months. Only like 27% of babies get breastfed all the way for 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's
and like 6 months is such a small amount of time. The global average is like 4.2 years.
Yes, 4 years. That's what I was going to say. And so another way that we are completely abandoning the resilience of our children is we've stopped breastfeeding, co-sleeping. You never see another mammal sleeping with their child far away, not connected. They're touching their child while they're sleeping. So all of these things are very obvious, and we have abandoned so many of them. And so essentially I prove that nature is conservative, and that's the crux of my book. And not conservative like, Donald Trump, but conservative in that there's things that should be conserved in culture, and we are abandoning them.
Right. Well, that sounds like a very interesting book. So I look forward to reading it when it comes out, for sure.
Yes, we will look forward to that. And then we're having a big event on the ranch, if people are interested, the last weekend of September, called Food is Medicine. And we're having all different speakers. Will Harris.
We'll be there. TFEC will be there with a booth.
Yes, TFSC will be there with a booth, but we would love people to buy tickets. Right now there's a discount on tickets, and it's going to go up at the end of the month, but you can also use Mollie 10 and get an additional discount on your tickets. And everybody that buys a ticket is going to get a signed copy of my book as part of their purchase price for anyone that buys a full weekend ticket. And Saturday night, we're going to have a book release party on the ranch as part of that weekend event. And I'm going to do a little talk and a little reading from the book, and we're going to have drinks and hors d'oeuvres and celebrate the book and take pictures and do a bunch of stuff to promote the book that night. So it'll be a fun book release party is happening in the middle of that event, and everybody that buys a full weekend ticket will get the opportunity to have an advance copy.
Where can people learn more about this event and purchase tickets?
On the website, sovereigntyranch.com, or you can go to my Instagram, to my link tree, and it will take you there. And you can stay for the weekend and rent housing, or you can just come as a day tripper if you live close by. So either is an option for you guys. And it's going to be it's everything from MMA fighters talking about how they realized that real foods could heal themselves faster from fights, to farmers who risked everything to get their own processing facility so that they could get a more high quality food, to the consumer, to a man whose son had stage 4 cancer at 4 years old, and he cured him by essentially only eating local foods that were coherent to where he is. And so all different talks about all different things. We're going to have a recovering from veganism panel, a bunch of people that were vegan that are no longer vegan. We're going to record some live podcasts. And then we're also going to have workshops and canning workshops and fermenting workshops and sourdough bread making. And it's really going to be a choose your own adventure. There's going to be talks. There's going to be, hanging out and swimming in the pond and doing sound therapy. And there's going to be a healing tent where people are doing adjustments and Reiki. And there's going to be different food conversations. There's going to be a butchery class. But if you don't want to kill an animal, there'll be something else counter programming that. So it really will be. And there'll be a kids tent, and we have kids tickets, and you can bring your kids, and over a certain age, you can drop your kids off at the kids tent, and we have lanyards and wristbands. And so nobody steals your kids. And
yeah. So that is September 25th through 28th up at your ranch, South Sovereignty Ranch in Bandera, right?
Yes.
So they can find you at sovereigntyranch.com.
Yep. And we're in the early bird special for the tickets. So they're cheaper right now. And you're going to get a discount. If you use Mollie 10, you'll get an extra discount on your tickets.
I love that. Well, I admire and respect all the work that you and your family are doing over at Sovereignty Ranch. I think this is another aspect of our liberty that we need to reclaim as part of our personal responsibility. There's been a huge push to make us forget our own power. And part of that reclaiming of our power is coming back to the truth, which is that we can be more self-sufficient and that we were designed to be more connected to our environment. And I love that you are setting that example and lighting the way forward for others to follow the model, not just doing it yourselves and giving yourself like an atta girl, but you are showing others how they also can replicate those tenets for themselves. So I think it's great.
Thank you so much for having me on. This project that me and my husband are doing, like I said, only works if the community supports it. So my request is in whatever way that you can support. And even if you don't have money to buy certain things, just following us on Instagram, resharing what we share, elevating our story is another way to support. So please, the restaurant is Eat at the Barn on Instagram. Talk to Mollie on Instagram, and the farm is Sovereignty Ranch on Instagram. So please like and share and follow and elevate the stories so that someone else that can buy $300 worth of produce, if that's not you, can support us. And then the more that we do, we can drive the prices down and make it more affordable for everybody. And please keep us in mind for birthday parties, any of those kinds of things. We have bounce houses. We have all the stuff to make it awesome for you and your kiddos. You can rent a house for the weekend, and we would love to feed you the highest quality food. Even my sister-in-law is a really talented baker. And so we do vegan cakes, gluten-free cakes, regular cakes that are just all organic, no filling, no nothing. So we really want to have the best version. We don't want your kids to never get to have a birthday cake, but we want them to have the best version of that. And so keep us in mind for all of those occasions. We would love to be your go-to venue for all of it.
Well, I love that you are there, and I look forward to getting to meet you in person soon and getting to experience Sovereignty Ranch for myself. My team is still talking about the amazing experience they had up there for Confluence, so we're excited to get to go back there. Thank you so much for opening up the ranch to Team TFBC. And Mollie Englehart, a wonderful proprietress at Sovereignty Ranch in Bandera, Texas. You can definitely find them at sovereigntyranch.com. I encourage you to find some way to reclaim your health and autonomy through proper food and nutrition, such as what Mollie provides. I am Carrie Bigford, Outreach Director with Texans for Vaccine Choice, and this has been another engaging episode of Shot Callers. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.